Armageddon.
Allahu Akbar. Good afternoon, gents. And people are here. They're in the chat, so everything looks good with the stream. Yes. Okay. So, well, another crazy week in world politics. The current news is what we've all been watching is Syria. I thought we just started there. What a bloodbath. But, the most predictable bloodbath in the history of bloodbaths. I'm not quite sure when it began. I'm hearing Thursday, but really it only hit the headlines yesterday, Saturday. But the media is reporting death toll as of today, Sunday, as high as 750 dead. That's the media which supports the regime doing this, so it's probably a lot higher. I've heard as high as 10,000. Don't know who could be counting that. That came from Professor Morandi, the Iranian academic and sort of geopolitical commentator. We've seen the footage. We're not going to play the footage unless there's particular stuff of interest that you guys want to play. It's obviously horrific. Including there's still one silver lining is that clearly large numbers of people were taken in by the few remaining Russians stationed at their airbase in Yemen on the coast. Those people must have been desperate. I mean, to bang on the doors, but they let them in and they're trying to feed them. Yeah, it's horrific. We were chatting just before, and you said,
"Yeah,
you've never seen so many what?"
Yeah, I've never seen so many execution-style murders. Just
all at once.
All at once. Like, I think, this is probably the first time I've seen. I mean, because they would have the head choppy videos, in the past, here and there.
Yeah,
but this is like I didn't even have to go very far, and there's dozens.
I just scroll through my feed, and there's one after the other. I mean, point blank executions, laughing, mocking them. We've all seen the dog ones. They get them to crawl on the ground on all fours, large groups.
Yeah.
I think just men, at least, on that score. But that includes teenagers. And then, they're literally howling and barking like dogs. They're screaming pigs at them, and then they're shooting them. Now, I've heard that they had orders to not record what they were doing, but clearly that's not worked, that part of it. It's horrific. I don't like that extent of hatred and dehumanization is we haven't seen that in 3 years in Ukraine. Bark on the ground, you bark on, get on the ground and bark, you dogs. Ha 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 ha. Bang. Ha 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 ha. I'm filming it. There was some of it, and certainly from the Yukis towards Russian POWs early on.
Yeah, but these aren't POWs.
No, not even a war.
That's the thing. I've seen it described as retaliation because allegedly what started this whole thing off was that there was a contingent of Assad supporters who fought back against the HTS regime on the coast, and so that was allegedly, from what I saw, that was what sparked it all. That's what kicked it off.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that would be interesting. So it would be to suppress potential uprising that began with firing from Assad supporters. That's the claim, right?
Yeah.
And who's making that claim?
Well, it's. I mean, they're doing it publicly. Like, I mean, they put out public messaging that's what they're doing. Like
that Assad loyalists
not necessarily Assad loyalists, but Alawites, people who are under threat from people who don't support jihadi head choppers running Syria.
But is the claims that they started this? That what we're seeing is beating back against them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
do you think that's what happened?
That is what happened.
What, an armed uprising, or some skirmishes?
Yeah.
And now the regime's taking it out on civilians and whoever.
Yeah, which they're always
anyone's, because
they were always planning to do anyway. You know, I mean, that was the jihadi head choppers' mandate. You know, to install, you know, create. I mean, this is ISIS basically. You know, what do you expect?
Yeah. So and that's why I've been saying like allegedly and things, is because they said that this is retaliation, and it's like, well, maybe there was some resistance, but what was the resistance exactly? Was it an armed resistance, or was it just people saying like, no, we don't want to do this kind of thing? And so then they go full jihad on it, and they just use the messaging of retaliation for, you know, resisting.
The messaging, but there is some substance to it.
There's some substance, but the question is, you know, to what extent.
They didn't just go, wake up and go, let's do it, boys.
Yeah.
Okay. They wanted to, obviously, because they're relishing it and they're enjoying it. Yeah, I heard yesterday as well, I didn't check it out actually, that the UK has just lifted its sanctions on Syria.
Yeah. And well, all the messaging around it on the Western media is like, you know, is blaming
Assad, who's no longer there.
Blaming Assad loyalists or whatever, or they're trying to claim they're Assad loyalists, but they're obviously not. Like, it's even the EU is fully behind it and stuff.
I saw that.
European Union strongly condemns the recent attacks reportedly by pro-Assad elements. You know what I mean? They're all just Assad evil, Assad must go, Assad must go. They're still hanging on to that. These are the people who basically overthrew Assad, and, you know, eventually overthrew Assad after, probably 13 years of phony civil war that they launched on Syria in 2011, and which involved the creation, the rise of ISIS into around 2000, you know, specifically around 2014, 2015. Spreading across out of Iraq and into Syria. A bunch of basically Western-backed, Israeli-backed, Qatari, maybe some Middle Eastern groups, but primarily Western groups, because it's the West that has the biggest, the West, i.e. the US and Israel, and the Europeans who have the most interest in controlling the Middle East, to make the Middle East safe for Israel, and they wanted Assad to go. I mean, we all know this, right? It's not complicated, right?
Yeah.
We all know the background to this and all this kind of stuff.
I know it since 10 years. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's not like, it's like, this is...
but what just happened is
obviously follows on from all that.
I just want to find out what the basic events were that produced 10,000 dead.
Well, we don't know it's 10,000 dead. That's probably an exaggeration.
Probably, but thousands.
But it's like, it's a continuation of the stuff we've been talking about writing about for 10 or 15 years. You know what I mean? It's just one more step. I mean, it's a continuum, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. And it's being supported, like I said, I mean, it's all of a piece. Like, I mean, basically, the very condensed version of it is that like I was just starting to say, in 2014 or 2011, they launched a phony civil war in Syria to get rid of Assad, because Assad must go, because Assad was supporting it was basically the Palestinians, was like pro-Iran, pro-Iraqi resistance. I mean, it goes back to 9/11, you know, it started in 9/11, if you want to go back that far. Basically, Syria had to go under Assad. Assad must go, Assad must go, Assad must go, ad nauseum for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And then, in earnest in 2014, phony civil war started in Syria with the rise of Western and Israeli-backed head-chopping jihadi, Al-Qaeda, ISIS types to go into a country, try and overthrow, quote-unquote, civil war against Assad, trying to overthrow him with the help of the Russians. They weren't able to do that, but then eventually Assad was, late last year, Assad was ousted, and surprise, the jihadis that had been the ones who were the tip of the spear for the phony civil war to overthrow Assad, they're put in power. Like this Al-Julani guy, who's now being called by the BBC. What's his official name? Ahmed. They call him Ahmed Al-Shara. And he's dressed in a suit now. You know, he's still got the dodgy beard, yeah. But now he's got the head choppy beard, but he's got the neck beard, but he's dressed in a suit, and he's shaking and pressing the flesh with European officials, and they're loving him and all that kind of stuff, and calling him what are the BBC calling him? BBC are calling him Syrian leader. The Syrian leader calls for peace. That's what the BBC has on their front page right now. The Syrian leader calls for peace after hundreds of civilians killed. It's like he's the one who ordered the killing of civilians. Basically, this guy is literally ISIS. They basically put him in power because, well, what are you going to do when you arm and fund and train hordes of ISIS head choppers to overthrow an Assad government, and finally the Assad government, and finally when Assad leaves, well, who's going to take power? Well, it's going to be our jihadi head choppers, and they need to be rehabilitated by the West to make them look like these. This is the peaceful, woke, liberal, diverse jihadi head choppers now who are in power in Syria because that's who we want to be in Syria. But then they're basically still ISIS head choppers, and the Christians and the Alawites, the ones who are supportive of Assad, let's say, and were happy enough under the Assad government, finally decide, there just a few days ago, obviously they had planned it beforehand and stuff, but they decided to, get themselves together because of the remnants of probably the Syrian military and other groups who fought against ISIS at the time. And they take up arms and they start shooting a bunch of these HTS head choppers. And then this is a reprisal. We'll kill these Alawites, we'll kill these Christians because we're a bunch of ISIS head choppers. I mean, just think back to what ISIS was doing 10 or 15 years ago and why it was in the press and why it was a big deal. They were killing all infidels wherever they came across them, including Muslims.
Yeah.
Particularly Shias, but also Sunnis, if they decided they were not quite jihadi enough. And just the despicable part of it is Western media trying to pretend that, like I said, there's it's this one.
Show that EU statement, because people are complaining that, oh, where's the West? They're silent. Actually, they've spoken in support of this.
Yeah, they don't. They're whatever. They're a bunch of cynical, and these are the same people. And this is the. Oh, sorry, I sent it the wrong place. It's Studio, except Studio isn't. Have you got your pop-up on, Scotty?
Yes.
Okay. This is the European Union. This is the European External Action Service, EEAS. You got it?
AKA the Foreign Ministry, which...
Basically the unelected European Foreign Ministry, which doesn't really exist.
Seem to be having technical difficulties with... Okay. Please wait.
With the messaging.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's the European External Action Service, as it's called, European, and their their messaging is: the European Union strongly condemns the recent attacks reportedly by pro-Assad elements on interim government forces, ISIS. Interim government forces is ISIS in the coastal areas of Syria, and all violence and all violence against civilians, just as an afterthought. And they've got a read more link, and this is by the spokesperson on the latest developments in Syria. From the European External Action Service, and this woman, the person who runs that is that what's her name, Kaja Kallas, whatever, who got that job recently. She was formerly the Prime Minister of Estonia, and
there we go.
So that's at the bottom there, and this is the one who's like, this is the woman you see a lot on Twitter, probably blondie, small, frail, war harpy type person who doesn't know shit from Shinola, but gets up there and starts talking about how, we need to break Russia. She's the one who said we need to break Russia up into smaller pieces, and we need to defeat Russia, because how can we defeat China if we don't defeat Russia? Like woke, she's DEI basically. She's a DEI hire, for the European Union, and she gets up there and just spouts
whatever nonsense,
inane bullshit, that she's been told, and she's an ideologue. It's embarrassing to actually have her up there. But so this what you're reading here is from her department, let's say, Department of Foreign Affairs, you could call it maybe, of the European Union, which is entirely unelected. Obviously, nobody elected her or voted for her. So yeah, surprise, but at the same time, she's the one who's crying about poor Ukrainians, and we have to protect the Ukrainian civilians, but not the Syrian civilians. from the head choppers. Protect the Ukrainians from the evil Russians who launched an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, or so we're told. But don't give a shit about civilians being slaughtered, including Christians, in Syria by the group that we don't give a shit about them, because the group that is doing the killing are the ones that we help to put in power to overthrow Assad.
This is among the visits to the new dear leader of Syria the last month. This is the EU commissioner. Her name is Hadja Lahbib. I'm guessing she's not European, but somehow she's the EU commissioner. Anyway, Belgian DEI.
Again.
1 month ago, she visited Syria. That's a photo of her with dear leader Jolani. He claimed that this post claims that it was to give him money, and I checked, and it does seem to hold out. This is an article about her visit. If you scroll for her name, Hadja, Hadja. Yes. In her last visit, Commissioner Hadja Labib announced a humanitarian assistance package of 235 million euros and discussed the lifting of sanctions on Syria in order to, quote, encourage the new authorities to build an inclusive Syria, embracing all its citizens, all its diversity. We need to see the rule of law being respected, human rights, women's rights.
Yeah, well, if you want that, don't install a bunch of jihadi head choppers
who are going to go around killing a bunch of women and children, execution style.
In case you're wondering, Lahbib is the European Commissioner for Preparedness, Crisis Management, and Equality. What the fuck does any of that have to do with? Oh my god,
it's a shit show. It's a clown show.
Oh,
a deadly clown show.
In Europe, it's really bad. This is really bad. You have an emigre Arab who's now a totally freed, individuated Western liberal, giving money to head choppers in such a way that you can reasonably assume that they're content. In fact, that's in partly what the service is for, all the while telling it that the EU taxpayer money is going for the opposite reason than the one that's actually produced. And then you've got this. This is Vienna yesterday evening. A spontaneous protest on the streets of Vienna. You would think against the massacres, but no. Play. That's just Vienna. There was several protests yesterday as well, spontaneous cheering on the massacres against the dogs and the pigs, Alawites, slaughter all the Christians. I mean, what the fuck has that got to do with a new democratic free Syria? Well, clearly it didn't and never did. It was an inter-tribal, inter-ethnic thing, a Sunni Wahhabist thing, and the EU is still on with it, even though objective number one has been achieved. It's like they're still in nation building mode. Oh, it'll be fine. It'll work out. No, it won't. They're insane. Sunni extremists are insane. Meanwhile, there was another protest in Germany, actually, in Berlin yesterday, in support of Palestinian victims of Israel, but the German police broke it up violently. Go figure. The only thing that what would make that consistent is, I suppose, Israel really likes one of them and really hates the other. So that's consistent. Other than that, there's no consistent European foreign policy stance on supporting one and crushing the other. I mean, it's just Israel's interest.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to. It's Israel's interest, and it's also keeping the Russians out of there. You know, the West, obviously, Russia, focus on Russia is behind all of this as well, and they really would like to deprive Russia of access to, you know, their bases, their ports, and their base in their port and their base in Syria, so. You know, that was part of the reason why the whole Assad must go thing happened. Part of the reason, it's multifaceted, I suppose, the geopolitics of it, but it was on one hand, or primarily, let's say, to make the Middle East safe for Israel and safe for America, at least pre-Trump, but also to push back against Russia anytime they can. You know, I mean, it's. Up until now, it's all kind of potentially possibly changed, but up until Trump came in, it was all focused on American imperial kind of dominance, maintaining American hegemony in strategically important areas and pushing back peer competitors, pushing back and pushing out peer competitors like Russia and China, but Russia in particular. I mean, as much talk as there's about China, there's really nothing happening in that respect on China. It's all centered on Middle East. It's basically Russia's backyard, right? The Middle East and Europe is where the focus has been for the last 20, 25 years, you know.
But this time Russia can't. Well, a couple of things. This fully justifies anyone who didn't get it at the time, Putin's speech in 2015. Do you understand what you've done now? And then the next day he goes weapons hot and Russia effectively intervenes in Syria at the invitation of Assad.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, among other reasons for doing it, was because you can't have an extremist state. And we have a personal sort of local national interest because a lot of these guys are coming from Chechnya at a central stance.
Mm-hmm.
We know they are.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, dozens of the videos you saw yesterday are guys from the central stance, Uyghurs, slanty eyes, grinning their heads off.
From all over the place.
Yeah.
And they're in there killing native Syrians.
Yeah.
Claiming that they're the new leaders of Syria. And they're from fucking, you know, one of the stands or
far west
or the Caucasus or
China.
Yeah. So it's a shit show.
It's a shit
it's
show.
A massive shit show that's come to fruition.
And nothing.
It's
desolate. I don't see any, barring foreign intervention, which would be Russia, but Russia's tied up since then.
Yeah,
it's different to 2015, and now it's in Ukraine.
Trump needs to go in there and bomb them all.
Well, that's what I was kind of half wondering. At this point now, you have two. Not just one, but two back-to-back extremist sects in charge of the two largest arsenals in the Levant. They obviously support each other to the extent that one of them has its forces all the way up outside the capital of the other, Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
They both basically have given full, unbridled passions to a sincere belief on their part, I believe, that the other is not human, it's an animal, and it's worthy of being a slave or killed. So that now dominates from pretty much the Turkish border to the Egyptian border. The only way back from that is, well, containment to stop it spreading, which is what Putin was explaining in 2015 as the rationale for doing this. The Americans agreed in a sense because they came in northern Iraq and beat the shit out of ISIS and the civilian population at the time as well. The Russians did it a bit more, tactfully and surgically.
Well, the Russians
in Syria.
The Russians did it wholesale partly in Iraq, but also in Syria, when they were focused on Syria. But they basically, I mean, it was the Russians who defeated ISIS. Trump's heads up his ass again, like as it is so often on these topics. He claims that he did this and he did that. He didn't do the Americans. He wasn't there to a large extent. He was there in 2016, 2020, but which was when a lot of this was happening. But he had no clue what he was doing in his first term. I mean, people have to understand that in Trump's first term, he really didn't do very much at all. He did a bit domestically, but he was so hamstrung in his first term that literally the policies, the foreign and domestic policies of the previous administrations, Obama and the deep state, basically carried on unimpeded throughout those 4 years of his first term.
Yeah.
Trump literally did nothing in his first term. He was not able to do anything. He was not able to affect any significant changes in domestic or foreign policy during his first term. And it was all then, because it was very, very, the little that he did was very quickly just turned back whenever Biden got in again in 2020. So, which is why, you see Trump this time taking a totally different approach and hitting the ground running and doing all this stuff, because they realize the only thing, it's almost like his first term was just information gathering as to what he needed to do to actually do what he wanted to do, which was to be president and do stuff that supposedly a president can do. He just had to gather all the information, and he gathered that information primarily by seeing just how much he was actually stonewalled and hamstrung and pushed back against, and lawfare, etc. As we know, all the stuff that happened, he realized through all of that just what he was up against. And in the 4 years of the Biden administration, from 2020 to 2024, last year, he obviously planned his campaign, but certainly when he realized he was gonna get in, he got the nomination, he was a shoo-in basically, and that's when he started to do his best to assemble a team of people that could actually do something. But even so, they have a big job ahead of them. They've started, but they've got a very big job ahead of them. So that's part of the reason why everybody's like, yay, Trump's really doing stuff. Look at all these executive orders he's signing, more than any president in the history of presidents and the history of the world. He's done so much more. Well, yeah, because he kind of had to. I mean, it's like, I don't know, turning around a massive ship of state. And it may take him 4 years to actually do anything significant, But anyway, yeah, he didn't defeat ISIS. They were only keeping ISIS under control during the Biden administration. The CIA and the US military, who were basically, like as we know, were not actually fulfilling any orders that he supposedly told them to do this and do that, remove troops from Syria or do certain things in different parts of the Middle East, troop movements, or carry out certain operations. And he found out afterwards, he said, yep, I just signed that off, we're going to do that. And they went, okay, sir, we'll take that away and not do it.
Yeah.
And we'll just not do it, and we'll just carry on with what we've been doing all along.
Yeah,
we run the country. So he didn't defeat ISIS. It was the Russians who defeated ISIS. And give, starting in about 2015, 2016, for the next few years, and give Assad that much more time. But as we saw late last year, it all kind of fell apart. The Russians, and it's not a coincidence that it fell apart at a time when the Russians were bogged down in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence that they couldn't effectively prop up or keep Assad or support Assad in power indefinitely. And the jihadis were just retreated and were just waiting for the right moment to go in and take back and do what they had planned to do originally. Assad should have been overthrown. The Assad must go. I mean, does anybody not realize that? Like, when Western politicians literally, I mean, maybe people forget, but like literally from about 2011 until 2024, so 13 years, Western politicians and the media probably said the words Assad must go 50 million times And that's probably not an exaggeration. Maybe it is an exaggeration.
5 million.
5 million times. They literally said it 5 million times publicly. And during that whole time, a bunch of jihadis were trying to overthrow the Assad government. Is there any connection between these politicians and the media in the West saying this and the fact that these jihadis are trying to do it? Are they just
so happen
to have ideological unison there for some reason? It was just coincidental. Oh, we find ourselves agreeing with the jihadis, with the head choppers in ISIS. Like, it's almost like we're like the PR people for the jihadi head choppers, even though we're condemning them on the one hand. What they're doing is what we wanted them to do, which is why you get, Jake Sullivan in the WikiLeaks cable to Hillary Clinton, who was, whatever his title was under Biden there in the last administration, Jake Sullivan. He's been there for a long time, saying, sent an email to Hillary Clinton saying Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Al-Qaeda, i.e. ISIS, i.e. head choppers, are on our side. Oh, so I mean, it's not a mystery. Like, it's only a mystery for idiots who don't want to believe that that's the case. Like, but it's whenever you see a convergence of two things like that, you can go ahead and just use your basic critical thinking. Your basic, like, one neuron meets the other neuron, and you draw a conclusion because it seems to be the case. That's what was going on. You don't have to,
Would you go further? For me, it's like, it's such a consistent pattern and it's so obvious. Do you ever wonder if the liberal autocrats, let's say, of the West, this is what they seek? That isn't just like them bungling again. Oh, gosh, they've cut off 10,000 heads. Oops. But that they actively sought that.
Sought what?
This outcome. That they want the kind of chaos. The ideological alignment, how in sync is it? Do they recoil? Do they express their disgust, which they want to do on so many other issues, when they see this kind of thing, or do they just not see it or something?
They don't express their disgust, though.
Is this the outcome they sought? Like
I just showed, in the European Union isn't expressing any disgust. They're complaining. They're criticizing the people who are being slaughtered.
Yeah. That's what I worry about. That so far for us in the West, this is all still over there. But does this reveal the mindset of what they're like and what they're gearing up to do to us here?
Of jihadi armies.
How extreme are they?
Well, maybe not necessarily jihadi armies, but I mean, it does seem to be a thing that they are in alignment with, in terms of, like, this is what polarization is all about, getting people on board with doing all the things that they want because they don't like the world order as it is, because they can't do the things they want to do, which is have people walk on their hands and knees and have them bark like dogs and then kill them and laugh maniacally. Like, these are things that they want to do, but they know they can't. And so they need something in order to get that to happen. So are we looking, when we see the scenes in Syria, are we looking at a vision of Europe's future?
No, probably not. But I mean, you're seeing a version of that. The European version of that is jihadis swearing allegiance to ISIS or Al-Qaeda or whatever, or denouncing the infidel and driving cars into dozens of people and killing half a dozen. And that's a version of it.
And the ambivalence they have about those things. In fact,
they say nothing. The government do nothing.
In fact, their first instinct, and you see it programmed in ordinary civilians, in fact, often, I've heard it a few times now, when someone's been run over or physically harmed in one of these incidents, they actually get up and they say, no, it's not, it's okay, I'm okay. He didn't mean it, kind of thing. Don't attack him because he's a Muslim, or don't mention that he was a migrant. That's racist. No. They're so contorted by it. They've almost got them on their knees barking like dogs. We're pretty close in their minds.
Who, people?
Yeah, Westerners, Europeans especially.
Yeah.
Like the women in Paris who recently did their there was a group of, like, I don't know, maybe like 30 or some odd women marching through Paris topless with, like, written on their chests, like, evil fascists, and saluting and saying,
I know who they are. They're nuts.
That's feminine.
That's feminine. They came out of Ukraine 10 years ago. They left and they reset up in Paris. That's the new HQ. Yeah,
but I mean,
the Ukrainian nutters.
You've already had. I mean, put together the numbers of people over the past 10 years, let's say, because it really started in around at about in 2015, with attacks in big attacks in Europe, like the Bataclan, Charlie Hebdo in the Bataclan in 2015. There were probably a few more before that, but it started in earnest then, and then over the following years, 2016, 17, 18, you had multiple different terror attacks. You need to go back and look at them all, and then count all the numbers of people. Okay, it's spread out over years, but the Bataclan was something like 80 people. You know what I mean? In one night. Okay, in Syria, we're talking about hundreds of people over a few days. Is there much in the way of difference in terms of the horror of the massacre, the nature of it as a massacre? You know what I mean? And it's done by the same people. So you're asking, is this the future of what we're seeing in Syria, the future of Europe? Well, Europe's already been there.
Yeah, we're ruled by liberal terrorists.
But I mean, it's already been there in the sense of having jihadi ISIS types going in and slaughtering dozens of people.
Yeah. So far, that's at one remove. That's not us. It's a very thinly veiled cloak of, well, goodness, where did that come from? And oh, well, we'll just have to live with it. Literally a statement of French ministers over the years. Shit happens. Literally on the day it happens, they shrug and they go,
we have to learn to live with this. Yeah,
we have to learn to live with it.
Yeah, because that's what we've been supporting.
Because
these
I think
people.
They either know, they're either read in, or they instinctively recognize it. I like this. I like what it's doing to these people. These people need to be taught a lesson.
Well, governments, pathological governments are never averse to any event that creates fear and kind of discord amongst the population. You know what I mean? It's, you know, the government, a lot of corrupt and dysfunctional governments try to do that themselves in different ways, in much more, you know, benign, relatively benign ways, but they want to control people. Like, so any event that plays into that agenda, which is, you know, affords them more control, it's like, affords them more control by making the people more cowed, more afraid, less likely to want to go out, less likely to express themselves, less likely to, you know, basically cowed.
Yeah.
Then a pathological government will go, yeah. Secretly, it'll
welcome all and everything in whatever form it's gifted.
Yeah.
Solutions. I was going to say, yeah, the only, obviously, what worked before was Russia intervening. Couldn't happen now because it's tied up in Ukraine. If he's thought about it, maybe Trump has to stitch up Ukraine ASAP. Maybe that's part of motivating to enable renewed Russian interest in what's more likely its backyard than the US's. I can't see the US in your fantasy. You would go, well, one option is the US actually invades the Middle East for real. This time it's an honest to God crusade, because right now the Levant is fogged. It needs a real, actual crusade, not the fake one that produced the situation, the real one. But of course, it's not just HTS. The elephant in the room is the other sect.
Well, but you need to go back to the era of the Crusades, the early. The 1200s, 1100s, and the 1200s, and send European Christians over to take back the Middle East for Jesus and kick out the Muslims and the Jews.
Keep them.
Well, cow them. Keep them as vassals.
Keep them under pressure. When there's no pressure against them, all the 2,000-year-old churches are destroyed, and at this rate, all the Christians will be dead.
Yeah,
in Lebanon, Syria. Yeah, and elsewhere. Which
is actually what
that's what's going to happen.
I mean, they're a sad must go refrain that they repeated so often. Has obviously, like we said, enabled the situation where Christians are being killed, and it was under Assad. As much as they called him a dictator and a brutal dictator and a blah 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 blah, which is all bullshit. Because we know that. I mean, I don't get it. Like, you know, how much information or how much awareness do people, the average person, have to have? How much evidence they have to have of that kind of a thing happening? Like, say, one of their governments or their government spokespeople or whoever, people in positions of power, authority, turning around and pointing out that the leader of some other country is a brutal dictator and must go. How many times does that have to happen before the average person goes, yeah, they're probably just making that up? I mean, that's probably not true. Like, I probably shouldn't go, yeah, I should go out in the street with a poster that says this particular
person must go.
Brutal dictator of the day must go, and start saying, free the people of this country. Probably shouldn't do that, you know? Because it looks to me like it's like, you know, our Western governments and leaders and stuff, you know, there's a different agenda at foot here, and they just want to kind of like, they want control over that country, basically.
In the past, when they did that, it went really south.
It didn't go well, and which would make me think that actually they had a different agenda. It wasn't about freeing the people of that country. It was more about like getting access to the resources of that country and controlling that country. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I think everybody knows that the West is an empire, or particularly America is an empire and has been an empire, and an empire has to control its vassal states, right? So whenever one of them would tend to want to go independent or whatever, the empire would probably go and smack them, you know, on the head, you know. But America isn't a very extremely overt empire in that sense. It does have garrisons all around the world, but it allows nominally a lot of countries that are technically under its imperial rule to have their own. They have their own government, but sometimes they'll get away from the whole. They'll get onto the wrong page, if you know what I mean. They won't be following the script of empire, basically. And then that's when we have to go in and say, brutal dictator killing his own people. We have to bomb him. We have to bomb him. That's the reason that we're just trying to maintain control over other countries. And then that brings up the question of, well, you know, should those other countries, are they independent? Should they be allowed to be independent? Should we really support, you know, the US or the West as an empire controlling these other countries, and if the people in that country want to use their own resources for their own benefit, should we not kind of like allow them to do that? And should we like avoid, you know, being you know, supporting our government in oppressing effectively these people, or denying them the freedom that they're actually entitled to? Maybe that's a lot of questions, a lot of thinking. Maybe that's too much thinking for the average person to do, you know, but it seems to me quite elementary, and quite an elementary level of thinking. I think that you could get to fairly quickly, that would stop you then in your tracks when you hear the next such and such leader should go because he is a brutal dictator who's killing his own people. You may go, meh. I'm a bit suspicious of that now. I don't think that's probably the truth. I think, especially the way it's gone, with a lot of times you said that, I don't think that's a good idea.
The litmus test would be if the next time it happens, if it's attempted, because we have just passed a moment where the now confirmed Director of National Intelligence in the United States, in her Senate confirmation hearing, when defending allegations that she's an Assad toady, said this was likely to happen. That's now gone viral, and people are sharing that idea. Well, no, but she is there because her side won a landslide election, which tells you have a shift. I think you would safely say you have most people going, yeah, we don't want that.
If you want to go full MAGA cope,
we don't believe that stuff anymore.
Yeah. Full MAGA cope would be that Trump is, you like full MAGA cope, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Full MAGA cope is that Trump is, you know, should soon try to, as quickly as possible, end the Ukrainian conflict so that Russia can free up resources in order to kick these head choppers out of Syria and retake effectively Russian control, or significant Russian influence on Syria, in allegiance with America, you know, because, you know, the Russians and Americans, they're fairly aligned on Israel. I mean, the Russians can be much more critical of Israel, but still, they maintain good relations with Israel, and that seems to be a mutual thing. Russian-Israeli relationship. That's not something that Putin is going to do anything about, let's say, himself. So, Russian and American interests in that respect, in terms of supporting Israel or wanting at least Israel to be safe in the Middle East, are aligned. And a lot of this stuff happening here is, in Syria in particular, is to do with keeping Israel safe, getting rid of Israel's enemies, i.e. Assad, who was supportive of Iran and supported by Iran, who was then supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then who were then supporting Palestine and blah, blah, blah. So Israel wanted them all gone. Get rid of them all. I don't like any of them. They all don't like me. They all don't like the Jews, so they must go. Anybody who doesn't like the Jews must go. Anybody who doesn't like the Jews is a brutal dictator killing his own people. But there could be an alignment there between Russia and the US in the Middle East, respecting Israel's right to exist. It's debatable, but anyway, but not going so far. Stopping this.
Respecting Israel's status quo, but saying, can you stop there?
Yeah, stop there.
Because at the moment they're in Syria, they're in Lebanon.
They're all about security guarantees. So Russia and America could provide security guarantees for Israel in the Middle East.
Which includes no more expansion, because Israel keeps expanding.
Israel doesn't, but it's only expanding because it's afraid that these jihadis that it actually facilitated or helped into power will basically be on its border.
Given its history, I'll be surprised if it withdraws from South Lebanon and southern Syria, because once it stays there, 20, 30 years go by, and then it goes, well, it's always been ours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what happened with the Golan Heights.
And the Turks are doing the same thing in the north.
Yeah, they're not leaving either. So,
I think the ultimate situation, a possible ultimate outcome of this would be a Balkanization of Syria. With you have Israelis with one part, you'd have to have the Christians, Alawites in the east, and the
Gaddafi said that would happen in one of his speeches.
In the west, and then a bunch of head choppers like Al Rudy Giuliani. Maybe he can be just dispensed with because he doesn't look good in the suit. Put your muumuu back on and go and marry 16 women in a hole in the desert somewhere. That's what you're all about, you fucking retard. Anyway, so whether or not they would be part of it, I don't think so, because their ideology it's not something that's it's not tenable in the long term, obviously, to have a extreme Sharia law in any part of Syria, except for your own people. So, and then what are you going to do? You're going to carve out a little enclave of Syria, give the jihadi head choppers, say, good job, you spent all that time kind of trying to overthrow Assad, here's your reward, it's a little piece of Syria surrounded by American military bases or something, where you and your men and your 16 wives each can all chop each other's heads off or something like that. Like, no, we don't like to chop each other's heads off. We don't like to chop our own heads off. We only like to chop other people's heads off, our enemies, the enemies of Allah. So what? Then they're going to just invade these other Balkanized regions of a new Syria and periodically chop people's heads off or something like that. That's not tenable, right? So they would have to go. So you basically have Syria divided up between some different. There's obviously different groups: Druze, Alawites, Sunnis. And in the north, the Turk-supported groups. So you could have the north controlled by Turkey, the south controlled by Israel, the Alawites in the west, and different groups in different areas, whatever. It would take a long time though, because we know from the phrase Balkanization, we use that phrase because it's from the Balkans, and the Balkans weren't Balkanized and didn't become modern, independent, stable countries overnight. So we're not talking about something that can happen in the next few weeks, right? So, but that ultimately would have to be where this kind of thing would go, unless that just all goes down the toilet even more, which it could do.
Which is what Israel wanted since the 80s, the Old Yemen plan.
Yeah.
Break up of Syria into 5. There's a speech I saw, a clip of Gaddafi speaking in the early 2000s to one of his massive mega rallies. He said exactly that. You dumb Arabs, can't you see what they're trying to do? They want to break Syria into 5 pieces.
Yeah. And fair enough, do it. Get on with it. Make it happen. And then Trump, like I was saying, should make an agreement with Putin to stabilize. Or in the interim, Trump can make an agreement with Putin right now to try and stabilize that area until it. And you'd have to talk to the Israelis, and you have to get the Israelis on side. You'd have to keep them from going too far, and And there you go. Right now, there's like thousands of people in Hem and Airbase who all fled from these head choppers from the areas because, like, you know, they were the quote unquote uprising against these ISIS, HTS, whatever. Al Giuliani's men happened in the east among the Alawites and the Christians, remnants of the Assad regime, let's say, and other groups, and they started shooting a bunch of them and killed a bunch of them. And then this is a reprisal. So the reprisal is against civilians in that area in the west of Syria. So a lot of them have taken refuge in Hem and Airbase. There's like thousands of people on the actual airfield there, you know, right now, and the Russians are faced with a problem, you know. I mean, you have to do something with them, right? You have to either, well, they're feeding them and trying to house them and stuff, but if you let them back out, unless the whole thing comes to an end, but a lot of them probably aren't going to be happy going back, the ones that have fled into that airbase, you know what I mean? So, I mean, one possibility is that Russia would simply give them all refugee status and let them go to Russia, you know? But they have to do something, you know, and they don't really want to be seen as just kicking them all out, back out into the hands of the bearded head choppers, the ghouls outside the gates, you know. But maybe it's all getting better because, like I said, that the headline was Syrian leader. Interim leader Shara calls for peace. Reuters, you know, freaking, who else? Well, that was the BBC. Reuters, the BBC, pretty much across the whole legacy media spectrum. It's all Syrian interim leader. The new woke jihadi head chopper leader calls for peace after chopping everybody's heads off. And the BBC just reports it and says, there you go. Anyway, they're such dickheads.
To paraphrase that great American back in 2001, they can turn the whole region into a glass parking lot for all I care. Did they ever find who said that? That went viral in the days before viral videos. It was awesome.
Hey, look at this. Look at this. This is fucking... I mean, talk about mental gymnastics. Like, it's just bizarre. So this is Reuters, and Reuters then is picked up by everybody else, and they pretty much repeat the same thing, and the BBC does the same thing. So Syrian leader Ahmed Shara, that's head choppy Giuliani, Nomdegir al-Giuliani, member of ISIS, founder of HTS, offshoot of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. Basically just what it sounds like. Syrian leader Ahmed Shara scrambled on Sunday to contain some of the deadliest violence in 13 years of civil war, pitting loyalists of deposed President Bashar al-Assad against the country's new Islamist rulers. So, can someone tell me the difference between the Syrian leader and the country's new Islamist rulers? Is there some kind of a...
Yeah, they're trying to suggest that he's like, guys, stop, please.
But he's the leader.
He's the one who
He's the ruler.
Yeah.
Syrian leader. He's called another one interim leader. Syrian leader Ahmed Shara called for peace on Sunday after hundreds were killed in some of the... Again, same thing, against the country's new Islamist rulers. This is MSN.
Okay, now, Scotty, on that one, scroll up and just see who wrote it. There you go. You can't... This is an intractable problem, but it's...
Who wrote it?
Sunni Islam. I mean, you've got two Muslims who, of course, instinctively know to write something that speaks for the dear leader, even though they didn't get that. They didn't call him up and say, what's the situation there? Well, gosh, it's tough down here. I'm here trying to hold them all back. No, he just issued the orders, but they imagined this is what they want to believe is happening, you know. And they're probably, ensconced in London or wherever they live in the West, writing this bullshit narrative of what happened in where they're from. It's such a mess. That's why I wash my hands of it. Like, they're now like the EU commissioners, giving money back to genocide their own people where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, you're like, well, is it still a Western imperial war? It looks like to me, like it's looking like more and more like a civil war transported into the West.
Well, this is, it's the same thing. I mean, on the broad strokes, it's what happened after Saddam Hussein was removed. George Bush, Saddam was captured, and George Bush got on the aircraft carrier and declared mission accomplished in late 2003, and that was basically the sign, the starter gun for another 8 years of insurgency and quote unquote sectarian war, but basically that's when the real conflict actually started. The real war actually started after Bush declared mission accomplished, and he declared mission accomplished after the leader was deposed of Iraq, Saddam Hussein. So as soon as Assad is deposed, they think, finally, now that's it, all done. Now we can just get on with doing what we always wanted to do, which was have Syria be the way it should be to keep Israel happy. But in fact, that's actually the signal for much more bloodshed to actually start. Mm-hmm. So it happens every time. So, and they know, they don't care. They obviously don't care. I mean, at this point, it's like watching these people for 25 years set fires and start civil wars and arm different groups, one group against another. Groups that, although historically were just opposed to each other, let's say, or might have had small scale conflict or whatever. Western governments get in there, give both sides a load of weapons and training and stuff, and then have them go at it and then they wring their hands and say, "Oh, did you hear about that horrible violence and massacring in that country?" Mm-hmm. So having watched that, you watch that, watch them doing that for 25 years in many different places, and you start going, do you think they actually want that to happen? Do you think they actually like the kind of bloodshed and the chaos? Like, they like to stir things up in those countries? And it's like,
yeah,
I'm not sure. I think I need another 25 years of evidence to really convince me.
Yeah.
It's like, put my hand in the stove,
It's pretty
big red welt. Not sure if that stove is hot or not. I need to hold my hand on it for another 10 minutes just to really because I don't want to jump to conclusions, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. We don't want to.
Be really sure.
We don't want to discriminate.
Correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
It's bad to discriminate. You could be racist. So keep your hand there.
Yeah. Well, my hand's just burst into flames. So that's more evidence that, I think it might be hot. And that's gone kind of a cindery black color. Still, don't assume.
Okay, changing tack slightly. I'm still in the region. Friday, I think, it was announced that Egypt had come up with an alternative plan for Gaza. BBC headline is, "Oh God, this is really worrying for it. European leaders back realistic Arab plan for Gaza." Realistic, I suppose, in contradiction to Trump's
Mara Gaza.
Yeah,
Gaza Alago.
Leading European nations have said they support an Arab-backed plan. So it's Egyptian-led, but I think they did have a meeting about it, the Saudis, for the reconstruction of Gaza that would cost $53 billion and avoid, this is probably what interests Egypt, and avoid displacing Palestinians from the Strip. Mm-hmm. The plan drawn up by Egypt and endorsed by Arab leaders, presumably Saudi, has been rejected already by Israel and Trump, who presented his own vision, of course, the Middle East Riviera. But the foreign ministers in Europe welcomed it, said it's more realistic. It calls for Gaza to be rebuilt over 5 years. The The plan calls for Gaza to be governed temporarily by a committee of independent experts, oh boy, technocrats, and for international peacekeepers to be deployed to the territory. There's no way Israel's going to allow that. The committee would be responsible for overseeing aid and temporarily managing Gaza's affairs under the supervision of the Palestinian Authority. Well, Hamas, whatever's left of Hamas, isn't going to be happy with that either, because they're the West Bank rival to Hamas. Okay, at least they're thinking about it. The urgency for this, no doubt, came with Trump saying, "Yeah, Egypt will take them. Jordan will take them. I've talked to them. They're fine." Egypt's like, "No, here's $53 billion. No. Yeah, Egypt couldn't take them. Have you ever seen a map of the population distribution in Egypt?
No.
It is insane. So you can picture Egypt, right? I don't need to bring a map. It's a big square.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a desert, basically, with a river running through it, the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt's population, no one actually knows what it is, right? But it's around 112 million people. They live on the river exclusively. It is jam-packed. It is Gaza on steroids. I don't know how Gaza won the award before the genocide for the world's most densely populated strip, because Egypt is
taking the whole country's area.
Yeah,
for population density,
Yeah, it is a big river. But my God, yeah, they couldn't take 1 million or whoever. So that's their urgency for saying no, let's do something different.
Yeah,
that's where it's at. Here's a plan. But now other events have caught up with them. They have to talk about Syria, because that if they think it's just going to stay, well, I suppose Egypt. No, Egypt probably doesn't care so much. Jordan should be worried though about Syria. I mean, Turkey doesn't care because they have a huge military. Anyway, it's this topic is so depressing. It just goes from worse to worse, such that you do end up saying things like "just nuke it," which we're not serious about, of course. In the meantime, the best you can do is pray that other events overtake and exert pressures that's put a stop to this shit, because otherwise you really are looking at the fantasy of what they told you 10 years ago just burst on the scene. Islamic State in the Levant. That is actually now instantiated. But it's labeled diverse and inclusive, free, democratic fucking Syria. So they've created the real ISIL. And the bottom half of Syria is occupied by an American base and the IDF. And we know the mentality of the IDF. It's really, you can't put a paper between that and Sunni Wahhabism. That's why I say the whole region is just, it's written off. It's actual head choppers or us, Inc.
Yep. And that was the plan all along. I mean, this Giuliani guy getting rid of his moo and donning a suit and going and meeting people, but still not shaking hands with women, you know. That callous woman went, and one of them went.
Baerbock.
Baerbock, the German defense minister, went, and he wouldn't shake her hand. She's like, "This is fine. This is our new diverse."
And then they censored her in the official photos they released of them.
Yeah.
They blurred out her face.
She doesn't exist. And this is who we've put in power. And it was always going to be the case. I mean, the whole idea, we knew at the time that when ISIS was being weaponized to go through Iraq and Syria, that the whole point was to get rid of Assad primarily. And the reason they rose up in Iraq was because, well, America has obviously massive military bases in Iraq, and that's where they could be most effectively nurtured and, you know, and armed and trained and stuff, and then sent into Syria to overthrow Assad. And then once Assad would be overthrown, then ISIS, the crazy, you know, liver eaters and heart eaters of ISIS would suddenly be turned into
repackaged
as moderate rebels. And that's exactly what happened. It just took longer than they expected, but primarily because of Russia, but it took longer than they expected. And we see it. We've seen it over the past few months with this Giuliani guy. And it's a fucking joke. It's a fucking freak show. It's a complete freak show. You may as well put like Hannibal Lecter, you know, in a suit and have him roll him out and say
that he's here for women's rights.
Yeah, I'm here supporting women's rights and
to be served as lunch
and veganism.
That's where we're at. So yeah. You see why we're so cynical about the world? You see why there's no solving it? Sooner or later they win. They win in quotes because they just wreck the world in the process. But
yeah, and meanwhile, while this is happening, although before this most recent event in Syria, development in Syria, which was always going to happen at some point, you have the Europeans marching further and further down the path to
La Grande Armée Part 2. This time it'll work.
The Grande Armée.
At least this is funny. This gives us some comic relief.
This time we're gonna defeat the new Nazis in Russia, but also marching down the pathway of we have to go alone. We have to go it alone. We can't rely on American support. In fact, Trump is our enemy. I think I have something here. Who's this person? She's. I think it's just the German media. And it's funny how the media just put out what the government. Both of them are just on song, really. You know, Western media and Western governments. Western governments say something, and the Western media repeats it. This is who is she? I don't know. It's some German media outlet. It's only 10 seconds, so. Ja, volume.
Die Europäer müssen sich nun gleichzeitig gegen Russland und gegen einen immer feindlicher agierenden US-Präsidenten rüsten und dabei auch noch die Ukraine so stark machen, wie es eben irgend geht.
So Europeans face
a double threat.
Increasingly hostile, a double threat. Europeans now face a dual challenge: defending against Russia and an increasingly hostile US president. Of course, that's nothing new. That's what they've been saying. Presidents of European countries have been saying it, and they've all gone, you know, they're all going their own way, you know. The band's not going to make it anymore. We have to split up. And while they do that, talking about we're going to have to go to war with Russia. I mean, and I take that about, you know, as seriously as anything else that they've said about Russia over the past, you know, X number of years, because they're just bullshit artists. But it's interesting to see them ramp up the rhetoric and talk about, you know, like Macron had a speech there during the week where he basically used the phrase just blah blah blah, Russia evil, blah 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 blah, and also a call to the French people that your country needs you to do what? Well, I'm not sure. First of all, your country needs you to stop talking about my wife. First and foremost. Secondly, your country might need you to, you know, give up your cushy jobs and
pay more taxes.
Pay more taxes, but also, you know, start getting jobs in armament factories. You know, start churning out those shells because we're going to war with Russia.
He gave.
So it's all just, but I take that as all just being an attempt to kind of fearmonger and to justify. Basically, it's a after the fact PR attempt to get to quiet people down, to quiet Europeans down, because other European leaders are saying the same thing, Germans in particular, telling the people that, look, this 800 billion, so almost but basically about $1 trillion, we're going to give it to, of your money, we're going to give it to defense contractors to start building up a European military prowess, military capability, and we need you to support this because, you know, we're facing an existential threat. Things have never been this bad. So shut up. Don't complain about us taking your money and funneling it to defense contractors who then give kickbacks to politicians. It's just an attempt to instill fear in people or try and convince people that
bring them
Europeans, that the threat that they're talking about is real, and therefore the $1 trillion of their money that needs to be given to private corporations is justified. So shut up and don't say anything. So it's a grift, really. War's a racket, as Smedley Butler said a long time ago, almost 100 years ago.
It wasn't all air, though. In his TV address, Macron could cite the fact that defense spending under him since 2017 in France has doubled. What he's talking about now is like a doubling again within the next 2 years. Is much higher.
So it's like, you know how bad things have gotten in France right now. Now, I want you to just accept the fact that it's going to get way worse. And that's going to be good, because then that's preserving what we don't have anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But defense spending under Macron doubled because of Ukraine. He includes defense spending. He includes in defense spending throwing loads of money at Ukraine, giving weapons to Ukraine, sure, but throwing loads of money at Ukraine.
So
it's not.
It's not that the industrial base has cranked up.
No. I mean, they used their supplies, their stockpiles, whatever they had left over, but it hasn't exactly cranked up, because they obviously relied on America to do that, right? And they obviously thought as well that by this point, things would have reached a conclusion, basically, favorable to them. But it's not reaching a favorable conclusion to them. And Russia, just talking about that topic, Russia obviously is. Russia's been making, now whether or not this has much to do with Trump apparently or allegedly shutting off intelligence sharing with Ukraine, or whether it's just the Russians doubling down on, in the last days before an expected peace agreement. But they're at the point here where Ukraine is not going to have any territory in Russia to use as a bargaining chip, because the Kursk situation has gone horribly wrong for the Ukrainians now. Like I said, whether or not if that has something to do with this cutting off of intelligence sharing, or the backing, basically the Americans under Trump basically withdrawing in some way or other, that has given Russia an extra advantage in Kursk, may be the case. But the Russians were definitely determined to try and remove that potential bargaining chip of the Ukrainians still holding some territory in Kursk.
Did you hear how
they're not going to have it? They're not going to have it within a month from now. There'll be no Ukrainians in Russia.
Did you hear how they did it? They sent like a battalion or something of soldiers through the Sudza gas pipeline, and they emerged on the other, or at some point on the other side, behind, directly at the border. Russian soldiers creep through gas pipeline to strike Ukrainian forces in Kursk, bloggers say. But there's lots of photos apparently uploaded by the guys in the pipeline that are covered in soot and everything, or oil or something. And the theory is that they popped up right behind them, and now they've got a tight cauldron, and there's 10,000 Yukis in the cauldron. Once again, they're in another cauldron. That'll be cleared up quick in due course. Trump also said they're pounding Ukraine all over the place. Was he referring to an uptick in strikes and advances across the front line? Maybe, because that spurred Trump to threaten more sanctions against Russia. Maybe he's just talking big because you absolutely have to. You can't make it look like you're just letting Russia clean up. The intel sharing thing, I think it has come to a halt, as have weapon supplies. At least Hegseth was asked to verify that, and yes, there's a halt. They're not, and the Polish Prime Minister said it's indeed they're not crossing in from Poland. Romania, though, I'm not sure. They've got a funny regime in Romania at the moment. The satellite imagery has definitely, who knows? The CIA have their own satellites, right?
They at least say that they're not sharing that information with them anymore.
Yeah. There's a summary. This is RT, but they're relying on Western sources to verify this. That the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency has suspended the service at Trump's request. Ukraine loses access to US commercial satellites. So are they still using Starlink?
Apparently.
Okay.
According to Musk, the front line would collapse if you removed access to Starlink.
Okay.
Do it.
For the Ukrainians.
Do
It'll
it.
be over. It may happen. I mean, if it gets to the point where it's like,
Because he tried to do it before, and they twisted his arm, basically.
He talked about it before and that kind of stuff, but, I think that's definitely on the cards, and whether or not it will have the effect that he claimed it will, but maybe it will. It's definitely on the cards that that would be a way to call a halt to it, you know what I mean? But they're obviously deciding that would be part of a decision, or that would be a decision that would be taken in context of negotiations with the Russians coming to making some headway, basically, and coming to some actual definitive agreement. So they're still in that process. Probably shouldn't take too long, maybe another couple of months or something like that, but they will come to a decision, and obviously Trump, etc., are just being cautious about when they do what, you know what I mean, in terms of I think a lot of it is optics. I don't think there's very much that I don't think there's much to stop Trump, much if anything, to stop Trump from actually just deciding now, if he could. It's over. He said that enough, you know what I mean? He's been outspoken enough. I want it to end. If he could end it right now, he would do it. But there's obviously, he's getting information from different people, whatever, to like, well, let's hang on here because we do want to try and have the outcome be as favorable to us as possible.
Yeah.
And we always have to take into consideration the Europeans, but to a large extent, the Europeans can, as Victoria Nuland said, go fuck themselves because, they're not really up to much and they're going to have to live with the outcome, whatever outcome there is. And the outcome that there will be is pretty clear, which I think is, there's been enough maps produced and all that kind of stuff. The details of it is what needs to be negotiated. Like, if you could just remove the whole military aspect of it, Trump would be saying to the Russians, he is probably saying to the Russians, look, Russia's a resource, Ukraine is a resource. You have your, obviously, interest in the east of the country. You don't want any NATO military presence in the country because that's the whole reason that you started the conflict. The conflict started. So no NATO military presence. But that doesn't mean there can't be American business presence in the country.
Yeah. So
let's just do that. Just forget about the whole military aspect. You keep your military. Obviously, you got the 4 territories that you incorporated into Russia. Obviously, that's part of Russia, so there'll be military there. But the rest of Ukraine, let's just divvy it up between us economically. And tell the Europeans to go fuck themselves with all their warmongering. I mean, that's literally that's what Ukraine is about. You know what I mean? Ukraine was a resource for Russia when it was aligned with Russia up until 2014, until the US staged a coup under Obama. But now, since America has been involved in it for so long, Trump's thinking from a business point of view, well, look, it's a resource that has been opened up in a certain sense. And we don't want it all. Beforehand, under Biden and Obama, etc., they wanted it all. Under the CIA, they wanted it all. They wanted to use it as a kind of bridgehead to threaten and contain Russia. But Trump's like, look, I want to be aggressive about this. I'm not interested in threatening you and all that kind of stuff. I want to work with Russia. I want to work with China. I want to work with everybody. So in that context, Ukraine has now been opened up as a potential, resource. Let's agree on it purely on business, along business lines. There's no need to be, there's no scope to be militaristic about it because obviously that puts one nuclear power in opposition to another nuclear power, and we don't want to do that. He's shouting at Zelensky in the White House when last weekend, shouting that he was playing "You're gambling with World War III." So it's clear that Trump obviously doesn't want to do that. Doesn't want to involve the military in this at all. Doesn't want to set the US military against the Russian military. That should be off the table completely. Let's just divide it up as an economic prospect.
Yeah, he even said recently that he would like for everyone to get rid of their nukes.
Yeah,
including the United States.
Yeah,
everyone. Like, why can't we all just make some money?
Yeah,
we'll do some deals.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pragmatic.
It is.
All the noise is coming from Paris, London, and Brussels, though, this week, saying that they won't accept being cut out of it. Yeah,
I think, and if the Europeans go too far and push too far and insist on that too much, then Trump could just like take a step back and say, okay, look, we'll put it on hold. In fact, if you guys want to do that and you're talking about doing that, you need to kind of like go ahead and do that quickly.
Yeah,
I've got like a golf game to go to soon, and so if you guys want to go ahead and test your mettle, basically, go ahead and send a bunch of your French or German troops, whatever, into Ukraine, and then have at it with as peacekeeper, whatever you want to call them. Russia will attack them, and then you can fight with Russia for like a few hours or something like that. You can have your ass handed to you by Russia. You can run back to Europe, and then I'll go, okay, you done now? Okay. So Russia, as I was saying, how much Ukraine do you actually want, and how much can we have? I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, shoot, at that point, there's nothing left of Europe, and so you could just be like, now that you're done, Russia, how much of Europe do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we'll take the other half.
Yeah, let's just divide it up. That's what I'm saying.
Just like in 1989.
Yeah. Just like in 1940.
So all that last 40 years was just
just like in
the status quo.
Just like in 1945. Except not a Cold War, a warm war. A warm, fuzzy war without the war.
Yeah.
So like the Cold War, the Iron Curtain, it wouldn't be an Iron Curtain. It would be a beaded curtain. It wouldn't even be a curtain. It would be a big set of shears that anybody could pass through, and lots of light would come through, and it would just be, hey, how's it going on the other side of the shears there? Yeah, you got some stuff for us. We got some stuff for you. In fact, do we even need the shears? Be shears you can pull back. You don't need to put them over when it was a bit warm or something. Keep the sunlight out. But other than that, it would be a divvying up of the world, as happened during the Cold War, during the Warsaw Pact. As a result of that, divvying up of the world between East and West, but on friendly terms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for now, it's anything but friendly.
Trump's very friendly.
Trump is. The Europeans are nuts. I know, but now they're just having meetings about having meetings. So there was another EU summit last week, another aid package to Ukraine, 30 billion for this year alone. The 800 billion commitment to rebuild. Von der Leyen wanted to call it rearm Europe. And the French were like, maybe we shouldn't use that. Let's call it something fuzzier. Because she gets a bit excited and her hand starts to rise. And, the German in her. Hang on, back off. But the 800 billion figure she came out with last Sunday, people's jaws dropped, but that actually was used in the EU summit. That's the kind of scale that they say they're going to put money into European armament.
They want. You could almost look at it from the point of view of they saw what Russia did, and they want some of that. They provoked Russia into a conflict, thinking they would, deal a blow to Russia, but actually, Russia, transitioned to a wartime economy, and and managed it very well because wartime economies generally. There's a lot more production, it stimulates the economy, there's all sorts of new jobs and innovation, all kind of stuff, and it's a good thing, as long as you don't get killed in the war that you're prepping for, but or that you're at, But all the stuff, like America did it during the Second World War, right? It was boom time, right? And America got away with it because they weren't actually really involved in the Second World War. What a terrible thing to say. Well, they weren't really very much involved. History would tell you otherwise, but that's not actually what happened, obviously. Russia won the Second World War. So, and that's what's happened now. Russia's economy has done quite well, despite all the sanctions as well. It's done quite well as a wartime economy. There's a lot of, economic activity, positive economic activity as a result of it. And that's the result of the Europeans and the US government, the deep state, attempting to embroil Russia in a war and destroy it. But in fact, they got exactly the opposite. So the Europeans are like, oh, hang on a minute. So when you kind of are on a war footing and you can, tell everybody that you have this evil enemy that is an existential threat to you and you need to keep it back, then you can go, well, we're going to put a load of your tax dollars into rearming, into defense industry and all the associated industries, and that'll be really good for our economy. So let's do that too. Because we've just seen that Russia worked really well for Russia.
Yeah.
So let's do some of that. And they could do that, except you have to do something with all the stuff you're manufacturing, all the stuff you're manufacturing, right?
Well, that's what the war with Russia's for. It's to send it towards Russia so Russia can blow it up.
Yeah.
And then you need more armaments, and so then...
But it doesn't work that way, though. There's an optics thing, and there's a PR thing about it. So that if you're seen to actually engage in that war, then and actually get a good spanking, it kind of tends to go south. Just from the PR, it's kind of like the way the stock market has the fields. Well, it's kind of like that. It's tied to the economy as well, and it would just be a PR blow to the European Union, and it would have negative effects on European Union unity, etc. And the European Union might collapse as a result of something like that if they were seen to have been spanked in Ukraine and sent scuttling home.
Can it actually collapse though?
Yeah.
Because it's just it just seems the way that it's so manipulated and controlled right now. Mike Benz was saying that Europe lives in a Truman Show kind of thing, where, it's like, you reframe a retreat to a strategic advance to the rear. And so having your tanks blown up was a strategic, what is it? Like wasting of Russian weapons. Yeah. You frame it positively with the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah. And
carry on.
That doesn't really work. It can, but it depends how serious the defeat is in a certain sense. There's been there's memes out of the Ukraine conflict where Ukrainians claiming that when you see a Russian missile hitting a building, like say full of mercenaries or something like that, they claim that the glorious Ukrainian army used that building to intercept and take down that Russian missile,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing you're talking about, yeah.
Exactly.
And that can work as long as you have Big Daddy Patron keeping the money and the weapons flowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But left to your own devices, that doesn't fly very, very long, and suddenly, because you're actually being defeated, it's the reality of you actually being defeated that suddenly leaks out, and then you can't show that up, you can't spin that in any positive way, and that has net physical or direct real world impacts, even though it's only a perception. But the perception that you were defeated is serious. Nobody wants to even perceive that they've been defeated, because that translates into real world effects on your economy. It's tied to the idea of the market having the economy or the markets having sentiment. The markets have sentiment.
Yeah.
Like the stock exchange can tank a significant number of points if the stock exchange or the markets, however you want to describe it, get up that morning and aren't feeling very well. They're feeling a bit icky. So stocks just go down. Why did that happen? Well, market sentiment wasn't very good. And it's like, who? Well, it's not really who, it's the market. It wasn't feeling good today. It's complicated, but that's basically what it is, So
the Brits know all about the market.
Yeah. So the perception of the European Union having had their arses handed to them is not sitting well with investors. Investors think the European countries are a bunch of assholes who don't know shit from Shinola, and therefore it's weird how that happens. But then you'd have European stock exchanges and indexes would collapse, or not collapse, but would take a serious downgrading on that fact. It may not actually, like you said, you can. Why can't we just spin this as a victory? Well, apparently you can't. If it takes hold that people, businesses, the population, everybody feels that this was bad, then that's reflected in the real world in the markets. Even if tangibly you can claim that didn't really change anything. Okay, we got a few tanks blown up or something, but big deal. No, it's the perception. And suddenly your stock market has gone tits up. But also the European Union could quickly collapse if you'd reach a certain threshold of countries who no longer, and again that would be tied to governments getting into power who were kind of Eurosceptic. If countries if you get a government in power that's Eurosceptic, and it's backed by a majority of the electorate, all you need is 1 or 2 or 3 countries to actually signal that they want to exit the European Union, and then, I mean, you can't hold it together with.
Well, the EU summit last week, they passed the package to Ukraine and the future €800 billion commitment with 1 veto, which they just ignored. Hungary. Yeah. 1.
Yeah.
Is that enough? There's no. I don't see dominoes falling anytime soon.
No, what I'm talking about, I'm talking about in terms of the reason they all voted for that is because it's seen as, like I said, it's basically a stimulus. It's seen as an economic stimulus. It's just used. I mean, it's like bank bailouts or I don't know, COVID stimulus, whatever, where the government, the Fed produces, the central bank produces a vast amount of money and dumps into the economy for stimulating the economy in this time of crisis. That's exactly what this is. And that's why all of the governments are happy with that, because it's like, we don't care what reason you're using to dump $1 trillion into the economy. Call it whatever you want. Say that, you make up whatever you want, but in this case, it's like, existential threat from Russia. We need to rearm Europe. Okay, we'll use that, but bottom line is there's a shitload of money coming into each of our economies, so good. Yeah. But in the scenario where they actually get involved, which I hope they're not stupid enough to do, but in the scenario where they go a bit too far and get a bit too full of themselves and actually put troops into Ukraine and end up in a direct conflict with Russia, that would be bad.
Because it's like the way, because then reality reality in the form of Russia will smack them in the face and smack them on the ass.
There's a point where a bubble,
because it's like they keep talking about how like Ukraine can hold on, Ukraine can win this, and it's like, do you have any idea or conception of history and what Russia is capable of, given what they have and what they've been doing? Because they've been talking about how, if Ukraine falls, they're gonna conquer, they're gonna go on to conquer all of Europe, and it's like, this has been 3 years, and they've not even taken over Ukraine.
Yeah,
it's like, think about that. Like, if what you're saying is true, and it took them 3 years to get through like 20%, one county,
20%, of Ukraine,
right? 20%. If it took them 3 years to get that far,
there's not 15 years before they get it all.
There's no way. There's no conceivable way in which Russia will last long enough to make it to Germany, let alone France.
Yeah.
So, like, on the face of it, that's retarded. But then on the other, so that's like one side of it, and then the other side of it would be like, you can't. So the reality is that they're not actually waging a full-scale war against Ukraine. So if you do send all of your troops in, then they will actually let loose the hounds of war.
And then they will get to Paris.
Which
they've done in history before.
But Russia has no interest.
But no European even knows that history.
But the thing is, it's a whole joke. It's a massive joke, like, because Russia obviously has no interest in. I mean, the whole premise of Russia, invading the rest of Europe, is based on the claim that Russia, invaded
willy-nilly,
invaded in an unprovoked fashion. It was unprovoked. The invasion was unprovoked, which is not true.
Yeah.
So as soon as you realize that that's not true, then the whole idea that Russia, is going to trying to expand territory and recreate the Soviet Union completely falls apart. There's no basis to it, no truth to it at all. So it's complete nonsense. I don't even give that the time of day, because it's obvious, crass, level 10 crass propaganda, But yeah.
No, I was just saying, just simply, purely for argument's sake, it's retarded.
Yeah.
Even if
it were true, it's retarded.
Even if it
but
were
it's not
true,
true,
it was retarded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a racket. Speaking of the financial press and market sentiment, this is the cover of The Economist magazine this week.
Winston Stormer.
Any thoughts?
Nonce.
And look at the byline, the sub.
Can he pull it off?
Pull what off?
The hat? No. The cigar? The over...
No, come on, seriously. Yeah. But what are they seriously suggesting he could be about to try to pull off?
Well, obviously
a victory against Russia.
Yeah.
A la Churchill.
Yeah.
No, it's more specific than that. What was it Churchill did in 1940?
Oh, he made a... Yeah.
He convinced FDR to join the war and bail the Brits out against a German-occupied Europe. They think they're still going to get America. They think the band's going to make it. They think they're either going to convince... Macron said it in the speech, "Don't worry, my cher citoyen. I will convince Trump. We will make the Americans come back. We're only doing this with the Americans." That's the same messaging he's getting in London.
Mm-hmm.
Stormer's grinning like a Cheshire cat because he still thinks Trump's going to come back in or not leave. Or they can wait out 4 years.
Yeah, come back in and do what? Like,
that's my take on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not so detached from... Russia said today in response to Macron's speech that he's detached from reality, but they're not so detached. They still expressly stating that we can't do this without the US.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they keep saying that when it's been so clear to the point that they're actually now taking actions and shutting down satellite access for the Ukrainians?
But
they're not at all worried. It's starting to take real effect, but they're still like, nope. The US is still in this.
Okay,
and we're planning accordingly.
Let's go with this for a second. Two instances here. There's 9/11 for one, and then there's Pearl Harbor for another. Both instances, the American administration wanted in. In 9/11, they wanted in to the Middle East, but they needed a justification.
They needed a new Pearl Harbor, and then
which then goes into Pearl Harbor, which FDR wanted into the World War, but he couldn't sell it to the population, and so he set it up for Pearl Harbor. Or on the best case scenario, he allowed Pearl Harbor to happen in order to get the American populace behind U.S. involvement in.
Here it's the reverse. Here the administration needs a ramp out.
Yeah, so they don't want to get involved. They don't want to get further involved, and in fact are working their way out. So so that whole line of reasoning is screwed.
Yeah,
because the administration doesn't want in; it wants out, and it's working its way out. So even if you were to have yet another Pearl Harbor type event.
Well, blamed on Russia.
I don't see...
What's that going to look like? I mean, that's not even possible. I can't imagine any situation where that would be even possible. Where we're like, I mean, where it would be, you could plausibly, because it has to be at least partly plausibly, or partly plausible as having been carried out by Russia. And what could Russia attack? That was what American interest could Russia attack that would justify Trump to turn around and say, "Oh, Russia's evil. They just attacked us. We're going to continue to support Ukraine."
That's why I'm saying I don't see how it would how getting US involved again is even possible, because they would need something like that, but there's no real way of actually making that happen.
Well, the only way, as delusional as it might sound, the only way that they could make it happen would be to actually put European troops into Ukraine and have them engage with Russian troops in a kind of hot conflict, and hope
that America
America would say,
save them.
Yeah, that would.
Article 5.
Yeah, Article 5. Activate Article 5.
Okay. So that would be the only way that I think it could like realistically
But I
play
think
out.
Trump, in that scenario, Trump would just go, meh.
Yeah.
You all fucked around and found out. Anyway, I have to go and talk to Putin. So, yeah, it's delusional, wishful thinking, maybe.
Okay.
So
Good.
to answer your question,
So it's still funny watching the Europeans. Yeah.
Desperately.
yeah, can he do it? No. Keir Starmer cannot pull it off.
No.
Because it's never going to happen.
The headline I saw you post was in the Telegraph. Trump considers pulling U.S. troops out of Germany. What the hell? That can't be. That would be awesome, but
A certain amount.
right. Okay. And moving them to Hungary. Well, that's happened before. Biden did that. He moved a chunk from Germany to Poland. Hungary, though, is different because obviously it's pro-peace. Okay, any other geopolitics? Oh, a small one, related though. The Georgescu's election team appealed to the European Court of Human Rights over, well, obviously election fraud, which they're wrongly accused of. And they said, no, we're not even going to hear it. There's no case to be heard. To their credit, the Supreme Court wouldn't even make a statement because they didn't even allow an initial hearing when it was Trump's turn in 2020. But still, there's no, your election can be stolen from you, and there's no legal recourse in the European Union to do anything about it. So it's, again, left to the people. Like everything else, it's going to come down to whether or not there's enough popular discontent for either military coups or revolutions. And they don't look likely at the moment. After Macron's speech on Wednesday, there was a small protest yesterday in Paris. Really piddly compared to the Gilets jaunes thing. Maybe 10,000, maybe 5,000 people protested saying, "We will not die in Ukraine for you, Macron." Other than that, man, Europe's like, whatever. That's partly what I worry about. The European people's like just malaise or something. They've given up protesting, and it's like they've yet to go through really realizing that there's no way they're voting or legislating their way out of this situation. They don't yet understand the kinds of people that are ruling over them. Americans did. They were really they were rattled by 2020, rattled by COVID, and they responded appropriately. Europeans, meh. Speaking of COVID, it's this week, in fact, tomorrow is the 5-year anniversary of the first pan-Western lockdowns.
Woohoo.
God save the regime. Wherever exactly those orders were issued from, was it an office in like the Pentagon, the CIA? What a week. Do you remember? You remember, like, initially some governments were like, no, we're not doing that, Boris. Whatever, dry Tinder happens every year. Carry on. And 12 hours later, full lockdown in accordance with exactly the same things everyone else has issued all around me. It was so freaky. And people just immediately, I remember going to the stores that week and trying to make a light of the situation as people were panic buying rice, bread, and bog roll. God, it's crazy what's going on out here, isn't it? And the store clerk said to me, she threw the credit card back, but people are dying. I still see her. She's still there. She hasn't. She's probably vaxxed up the wazoo, but she's doing okay. I smile at her and just say, "Hello." And I think she remembers me. I'm never sure though. Maybe next time when I go to her, I'll say, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, I like the receipt. And remember, Slava Ukraini." Zionist Jews freaking out big time this week. Why? Because Ian Carroll was on the Joe Rogan show. Good for him. And Candace Owens, heavily pregnant, was on Theo Vaughn's show. Although she was really talking about, mostly about the Macrons. But, yeah, fair play to Joe Rogan. Now we know that he knows more than he's been letting on because he just winked his whole way through.
Yeah.
And Ian Carroll, within 4 minutes, is like, Epstein. And then over the next 2.5 hours, Epstein 100 times. And Rogan just said, at one point, Carroll turns to him and said, breaks monologue and said, you let me know if I'm going too far with this. And Joe just leans back and he says, you just keep on cooking. And then when he finished his monologue, where he very carefully mentioned Jew just where necessary, but otherwise left any references to the people of the light out of it, Rogan said, that was really well done. Good job.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not the reason I'm bringing it up. Check out this X post by the CEO or the founder, maybe both, of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring. Talk about Unhinged, but it gives you some insight into, you talk about market sentiment. There's also kind of sentiment of certain groups of people, and they kind of instinctively feel it when they're in trouble. Jeremy Boring, yesterday was a terrible day. Notice he's not mentioning anything what happened. He's just, you're supposed to just know what he's talking about. Yesterday was a terrible day for American Jews. The embrace by so many prominent voices of demented, conspiratorial, anti-Jewish voices is one of the saddest, most alarming events in my lifetime. This way lies madness, and worse than madness. Do not let the times cost you your soul. Audience capture and unchecked tribalism are tools of the devil. Paranoia and revisionism are too, even if they really are out to get you. Okay? Heck, even a righteous cause can lead us to evil if we don't guard our hearts in the quest. The wicked often prosper, and the temptation to prosper often tempts us to join them. But only God offers the richness of salvation, and He, capital H, already became for us the only Jewish scapegoat for our sin and fear. Leave the rest of them alone.
What does that even mean?
2.4 million views. I haven't a fucking clue.
Not even the slightest.
No mention of Rogan, Carroll.
Who's Jeremy Boring?
CEO of Daily Wire. So that's
Okay.
Shapiro and Peterson and Candace Owens' old hangout until this week last year when they fired her.
He already became for us the only Jewish scapegoat for our sin and fear. No idea what you're talking about there. You're being a bit too Jewish there for me, Jeremy. A bit too convolutedly Jewish. Just a bit of plain talking. Don't be talking like Yahweh would.
Obviously, he's saying that it was a terrible day for American Jews because pointing out all the ways in which the Mossad has done terrible things to people and to the American government, and very much has the American government in its pocket. Noticing all of that is very bad for American Jews because anti-Semitism is the exact same as criticizing Israel and Israeli policies.
Yeah. They can never get over that, can they? I mean,
I think most of them have or can.
Like literally,
I'd say majority of world Jewry is not so implacably insane about this topic.
Literally, Ian Carroll said at least once every, like before and after each mention of Israel, he would say, "This isn't to say that all Jews are terrible people and are involved in every single aspect of all of this. This is just very specific factions."
He was really good about it, yeah.
He was very...
Which is what he really believes, too.
Yeah, no, and he's not wrong to say that it's not all Jews who are involved in this stuff. They don't all believe, whatever the craziest interpretation of the Talmud is. They don't all believe all that. And so he's pointed that out numerous times, because that is the exact way in which everybody who criticizes Israel gets criticized. It's that every time.
Yeah. I even saw, maybe it was someone else, some big shot patriot misfit. Big shot, right-wing conservative influencer. And he took an excerpt. There's a clip from Carol's appearance on Rogan. And he's ranting. Look, you see right here. Oh, it's just anti-Semitic, just vile, disgusting. And he says what Carol says in it. And you're like, okay, well, I'll go ahead and play it. I played it. Carol said the exact opposite. He said the exact opposite of what this guy is ranting about. And he, in turn, gets millions of views. This patriot interpretation of it. And it reminded me of what I was saying last week about, in some other context, the liberal mindset, where you sometimes wonder, it's so strong in them that you can be standing next to them and you're both watching the same event happen before your eyes. And it's almost as if, we have a more appropriate psychological understanding. What happens is that there's ideology that distorts their lens or colors what they want to see. But you do wonder if the light actually hits the retina of their eyes and interprets it differently. If they see things like totally, you can play the same thing in front of them and they read a totally different. It's so stark, and then their commitment to it is so strong.
It's also,
they're like, this is truth, and the rest of you live in the alternative universe with your alternative facts. And by the way, I feel disgusted and I find you vile, which is all the things we would say about them. It's total inversion.
There was the response that Ian Carroll has gotten, which has been gaining more popularity, is that Ian Carroll is funded by Qatar.
Yeah, I saw that. That's funny.
Yeah, people are putting that out there, but
is that serious? I thought that was a meme.
No. This is 100% serious. There are people. James Lindsay is one of them. Who, anytime, like Candace, Tucker, Ian, they're like, these guys really do believe
there's a Muslim dark money network.
Yes, it's literally inverting what's going on. So they're literally taking everything that Israel has done and is doing, changing the name to Qatar, and then applying it to everybody who criticizes Israel.
Wow, that may be what I saw. I saw memes then where people are saying Qatar is funding this and that, or Qatar was responsible for blowing up this and this, and then the community notes people, fact check, and say, actually, that was Israel.
Yeah, and people have noticed that, and so like there was one person who did it, basically creating a post, saying that Qatar. What was it? Qatar sank the USS Liberty. Qatar did this and that, and the community note is there. Like, no, that was all Israel.
Yeah,
and there's people in the comments who like didn't get the joke.
Oh, naturally.
But yeah, no, it's absolutely bonkers.
Like a lot of things.
Speaking of Israel, did we mention last week the Epstein Files? Pam Bondi AG announced that parts of the Epstein Files will be released with redactions made to safeguard grand jury information, confidential witnesses, and national security. I haven't read. They released it to influencers who are supposed to then take it to town, but Rolling Stone wrote a summary of this farce. Maybe we should share this. Hang on. The biggest questions remaining around the Jeffrey Epstein case. Last week, the White House took a stab at transparency by distributing binders of files related to the late financier Epstein and to a number of prominent far-right influencers. We all saw them leave the White House. The idea was that these people would comb through the material and share their findings with their millions of followers, demonstrating the Trump administration's commitment to freely sharing information. Okay, the move backfired completely. What Bondi had teased on Fox News and then released was mostly pages of Epstein's contact lists and flight logs from private jets he used, both of which have been in the public for years, and in less redacted form. Conspiracy theorists, eager to see the so-called Epstein client list, of which there has never been any evidence, call the disclosure a farce and renew their usual claims of an ongoing cover-up. Well, that's a bit harsh. It is an assumption that there's a list, but the reason there's an assumption there's a list is because the FBI raided all his mansions, including his island, and found it was riddled with cameras. And they took away box cards of either video cassettes or DVDs or whatever form they were stored in, clearly showing footage of, that's what they mean by the Epstein client list. Who went to these places? We know of some of them, but there's lots more. So people have assumed naturally there's a client list. But so then they're poo-pooing this here by saying, well, there is none. Yeah, because there's no.
That's the weirdest.
The FBI has its own files on this, and they won't.
It's the weirdest thing. The Epstein client list, of which there has never been any evidence. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
So this guy was a convicted pedophile and sex trafficker, and what it was all just for him? Like, is that what like the implication is? Like, there wasn't a client list because it was all just for him?
That's basically where they're drawing it. Yeah, that's why they. But then Pam Bondi's kind of let the cat out of the bag by saying that they're withholding some things for national security reasons. That obviously is because Epstein was doing this, maybe for Israel directly, maybe not. Maybe CIA was there a stand-in. But ultimately, Israel's involved. We know they're involved because the New York Post published over the last 10 years photos of Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, going in and out of his house.
Mm-hmm.
The one in New York that Wexner gave to Epstein. Anyway, Rogan was like, so Ian, are we going to hear? And Ian was like, Ian's realistic on this. He said, no, we're not. What's out in public is it.
But apparently that's enough, because that was what Ryan Dawson has used to come up with his, because he's gone through all the court documents, all the witness testimony. He's even interviewed some of the witnesses. And he's come up with 3 pages of names. He's only released the first page. But that's because, like, he wants to have the credit.
He wants to go on Rogan or Tucker Carlson, and be able to explain, his findings. Yeah. I know he's a bit. Bless him, he's a bit bitter about it because he's like, Epstein Files. I figured it out years ago. Just listen, and it's good work because he's compiled, like, among other things, it's good corroborating data. Payouts that were made to some of the girls by some people. Well, they're clearly involved. They're paying out not to be named or to be prosecuted.
There was something. So, like, with all of this going on, Ryan has, explained a bunch of different, like, aspects of it that people don't know, because it's not, like, broadcast to you via mainstream media things. Like, it's not put in front of your face. You kind of have to look for it. And so one of his points is that, people say, like, no one's been held accountable. And one of his points is that, well, there actually has been an accounting for a lot of people where, Epstein, jail, Ghislaine Maxwell, jail,
Yeah.
the number 3 person of the ring,
Brunel,
jail.
and suicide also, he's dead.
And suicide as well. Yep. But then also, like you were just saying, hundreds of millions of dollars have been paid out in fines and I don't know if it was. I don't think it was all fines. I think it was also, hush money and reparation kind of things. It's like there has been an accounting of a sort.
Yeah, it's just been kept very quiet.
Yeah.
I think that the beef people have with it, but they're not using the right terms because whatever. It's been a useful shorthand, the Epstein client list, and people kind of know what they mean when they say that, but it's as an actual technical term, it's incorrect. What they're getting at is, go back to what happened in Belgium in the 90s, the Dutroux scandal.
Mm-hmm.
There eventually was a trial. There was a prosecution, and he went to jail, as did his girlfriend, and I think some other pimp also served time. So again, 3 people suffered. The direct 3 people involved suffered repercussions. The point was that made it also upsetting was all the people that the girls named walking away. It's kind of like if you do a sting operation, what's normal practice under the law is anyone who's consuming the pedophilia online is also liable. That's an incentive for you not to go there and watch it and download and share it. So you're not just targeting the people producing the shit, but also watching. That doesn't apply in these high-profile scandals. In Belgium, the judges, the police, the royals, the bankers, the EU commissioners, who were doing the deeds, just retired, died peacefully in their sleep. That's what people mean when they say, when are you going to release the rest? We want to know who around us.
Yeah. Because it's not, and so with that, it's not just those who were involved with Epstein specifically, although that's part of it. Like they shouldn't be able to just, pay $62 million in one instance. It was $62 million. They shouldn't just be able to pay that money and walk away.
Yeah,
like it never happened. And it's not just that; it's also how many others are there that weren't involved in this one, but do partake, because it was like, you remember the incidents when they found out that there was like child pornography access to on Pentagon computers, I think it was.
Yeah. And like half the employees in the Pentagon. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. It's not just Epstein, it's that as well. That people instinctively want.
The Epstein thing is, it's like, for people who have been around, know that kind of stuff is part of the course, It's standard operating procedure for intel agencies. All of them do it, It's just that the Epstein was definitely Mossad. It was definitely a Mossad operation. And he was working for Mossad, working for himself, but working primarily for Mossad to collect. And it's just, they just spread a wide net, on everybody and anybody. They're not, when certain people would come to the island or whatever, or would be associated with Epstein or go to his house, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it could mean something.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you have this attitude, this is really Mossad type attitude of extreme paranoia and desire to control everybody and anybody, particularly in the US, and control the US government, and control as much as possible because you're megalomaniacal, you're a crazy person. Your narrative is that, look what they did to us Jews 80 years ago, this can never happen again. It was the guys who did it. We got to control the guys. Like, how do we control the guys? Well, we control the guys by controlling them. What's the best way to control them? Well, lots of different ways, but one of them certainly is get any dirt you can on them. So set up an operation where you create this financier and use your synonym, which is the average. Synonym is basically the average Jew who can be easily turned to being willing to serve an Israeli government or Israeli intel agency operation, right? Because, well, your first loyalty is to Israel, right? So they have the ability to carry out those operations, especially in Western countries where there are Jews. They have a really good ability, strong ability to carry those out. So the Epstein one was just that, and they cast the net super wide, and the lead-in was that Epstein was this notable, recommended financial consultant who could get people, get these rich and famous and influential people
to not pay taxes,
to offshore their money to avoid paying taxes. Yeah, and he was the point man, and that was put out there. And so it's a very complex operation, but you go about doing it and you get it done. And because of and the Israelis have been doing this in America for 80 years. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like it's something new, And you just cast a very wide net, and you have people over, and if some people want to come, and then you feel them out and find out what they're interested in. And if there's nothing on them, then there's nothing on them, and they can be on a list that they went to the island, but they went there just for to have a consultation or whatever. They didn't know at the time, right?
Well, apparently he was part of, like you were just saying, he was very much a man with a network, and so he would host things for scientists to go and network. And so he's going to have a wide net because he's trying to get as many people as possible involved, because if he becomes the guy that everyone goes to for these kind of connections and things, then it gives him a lot of access to people and information. And so if all he does is above board, then then he's not going to be able to use them in any other way. But for those who are more ill-inclined.
The only reason we found out about this is he got way too cocky.
Yeah. Well, level one obviously is the idea of offshoring.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's level one leverage that you have over people. And most of those people, like you saw the lists of the people in the Panama Papers and all that kind of stuff, like everybody and his dog, among the great and the good and rich and famous and stuff, were putting their money into offshore islands in the Caribbean, right? So Epstein was in on that basically, and if he does it, he's obviously got information about you. As soon as he's your financier, he's got information about your financial transactions, and maybe it could be exposed that you've done this, whatever. Maybe it's not illegal, maybe it is, maybe it's semi-legal, whatever, but that at the very least, that's something you have on people. So the first level, the entry level of that was of having access or control over these people, or leverage was through finances. But then as you develop a relationship with them, because you're their financier and stuff, you invite them to different places. Like you said, you set up kind of conferences for the scientific community or for any other
business,
discipline, actors, all that kind of stuff, and that way you just go, what we want, it's like Donald Rumsfeld's total information awareness. I want to know everything about everything right now. Spread the net super wide. I want to pull it all in, drag everything in. I want to know everything. All the knowns, all the unknowns, all the unknown unknowns, all the things we think we know, we don't know, we do know, we might know, maybe one day we wouldn't want to know, but we'll want to know it anyway. All of that, plus all the other stuff, I want it all, because I'm a nut job, right? I'm possessed by something. I'm a megalomaniacal fucking demon, and that's what the Israelis do as well. Get it all, everything. You never know what'll come out of it. And you'll find out that some of these people have predilections. The next entry is young girls. What older, stuffy scientific guy or whoever, not even scientific guy, wouldn't like the company of some young ladies? How young are they exactly? Well, this one looks like she's a bit older, but maybe she's not.
Yeah.
And the fact you didn't do anything, but the fact that I have a picture of you with a girl who can be looked up at the internet and find out that she was 16 at the time that you were sitting on a sofa with her.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Nothing else happened.
That's what I was thinking.
Nothing else happened. You don't have anything else on you, but is that enough? You want that out in the papers? And then it's like, well, no, I don't want that in the papers, so what do you want from me? Well, I don't know.
What can you do?
Let me think. What could you possibly do for me? Well,
let's say you who are in charge of this particular, sensitive thing, what can you do for me?
Yeah, or even if it's not someone that particular, but I want you to, get out on October 7th and make a TikTok video or make an Instagram post and say, thoughts and prayers to the poor Israelis. You're a big famous actor or singer or whatever. I want you to influence the people. Your 50 million followers on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Dance, monkey dance.
Yeah. Control. Anyway, I think we're running over time here, are we? You got anything else?
Nah, we'll wait till next week. There's been a spate of attacks against Tesla dealerships and whatnot. It began as arson attacks, but now they're protests. Yesterday, Columbus, Ohio, Sacramento, New York City. Musk has been looking into who exactly they are and has posted that he sees a Soros connection and they're Act Blue, a Democrat PAC. And
Elon derangement syndrome.
They're really, I mean, they obviously went after Trump, but they don't like Musk at all either. So they're going to try and hurt him through. Well, he said on Rogan's podcast he's worried about getting whacked. So he has to be careful about.
Yeah,
but he's not being particularly careful. He's still full on Doge. We'll see. This is the Empire striking back to its liberal minions. It's a peculiar case. When Trump was president in 2016, he had to formally hand over corporate control of his company to his family and maybe a lawyer. I'm not sure how that was done, but you must formally renounce if you're in a position of public office. Is Musk formally in a position of public office or not? Is he a paid consultant or not? Apparently they're trying to hit Tesla sales directly. And also, didn't a SpaceX rocket blow up this week? Was that another re-entry rocket booster claw catch attempt and it blew up on
No, it disintegrated up and I don't know if it was another
launch.
catch one, but
Okay.
no, it was after come back in or something. I think it was a bunch of it was what do you call it? What do you call the rocket? Whatever.
Starship.
Don't know. Fire something up in the sky, comes down the ball flames, what we do.
well, he's done it numerous times now.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's outside of the norm.
No.
For those things to go kaboom.
Not yet, no.
But maybe there was because I didn't see that one, so I don't have any insight as to whether or not there was anything.
We'll talk about it again because this looks like it might grow or blow up. Protests and or sabotage against his corporate interests.
Well, it's like I was saying, the feminine protesters in Paris. Musk was another one that they were, because it was like, they were doing the Nazi salute and saying, Sieg Heil to Trump and Musk and Putin, and I think even Orban got in there as well.
Oh yeah.
So
they're ultra liberals, where anyone who's in any way a strong male is a fascist. Simple as.
Mm-hmm.
They're nuts. They've always been nuts. And yeah. They're so nuts that Putin was there. That makes sense. They stormed on stage back in the 2000s when Putin was with Merkel at some summit.
was that the one where Putin
He
was
starts
like,
smiling.
"Ooh."
Yeah. Hello there.
Yeah. All right. We'll call it quits, yeah. I saw a man going up a hill with a cart,
Mm-hmm.
push cart full of horseshoes, 40 clovers, and rabbit's feet the other day. I thought to myself, wow, he's pushing his luck.
But a good one.
Amazing. They're only getting better and better. Anyway, we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for listening and watching. Hope you enjoy the show. We'll be back next week with another discussion on whatever nonsense has been going on between now and then. So until then, have a good week. See you later.
So long.
Thanks for watching.
Can't stop the signal, Mel.